Hey everyone, I am Roseheart. Before we dive into today's story, it would mean the world if you could hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming. Caleb's voice hitched as he concluded Treasure Island. Curled into his side, Lily stirred, a yawn escaping her lips, her flaxen hair brushing his face. Tom, perched at the bed's edge, remained impassive, though Caleb spotted the telltale droop of his eyelids. Lamplight danced in the room, sketching elongated shadows and exaggerating the crinkles framing Caleb's weary eyes. He snapped the book shut, the ensuing quiet punctuated only by the measured ticking of the hall clock. "All right, you two. Sleep calls." Lily's small hand tightened its grip on his sleeve. "Another story, Uncle Caleb? Of daring pirates." "Those buccaneers can wait," he chuckled, gently releasing her fingers. He snugged the blanket around her shoulders. "Big day tomorrow. Learning those letters." Lily's face fell. "Must I?" "Indeed. Gotta learn to decipher tales, just like your mama." He tousled her hair. "Now, hush and dream." He rose, and Tom trailed him to the doorway. "Uncle Caleb," Tom's voice, barely audible. "Are you? I'm happy." Caleb hesitated, hand on the jam. Evasions pricked his conscience, yet the unvarnished truth felt too weighty for young ears. "Just tuck it out, son, that's all." Tom nodded, skepticism etched on his face. He was outgrowing bedtime narratives, too sharp for simple fabrications. "Good night, Uncle Caleb." Back in the kitchen, the remnants of supper littered the table's surface. He cleared it by rote, his thoughts circling back to the day's demands. Endless chores, the children's bickering, the pressure of duty bearing down like an unseen weight. He was a lawman, not a domestic, not a mother. He could face down desperados and cattle thieves, but comforting two bereft children, that was another struggle altogether. He poured coffee, the acrid brew, a momentary solace. He knew the course he must take, even if the notion churned his stomach. Come morning, the savoury scent of frying bacon drifted through the house. Jedediah Billings, his deputy and closest confidant, occupied a kitchen chair, already making short work of a pancake stack. "Morning, Caleb. You look like a grizzly had you for breakfast." Caleb grunted, filling his mug. "Just tired." The young'uns were restless. Jed chewed thoughtfully. "They're good kids, Caleb. Just need time to heal." "Time I'm short on," Caleb muttered, grabbing a plate. He speared a strip of bacon. "Running the town. Running the spread. Raising two kids. I'm stretched too thin." Jed watched, his expression softening with concern. "You're bearing a heavy burden, Sheriff. No one would fault you for seeking aid." Caleb sighed. He trusted Jed implicitly, yet the admission felt akin to a failure. "I've been considering." He paused, then confessed, "I'm going to place an advertisement." Jed's brows arched high. "An ad? For what? Additional help? For a wife?" Caleb diverted his gaze, fixing it on his plate. The silence grew thick, broken only by the clink of Jed's cutlery. Finally, Jed spoke, his tone remarkably gentle. "A catalogue wife? Sure about that, Caleb?" "That's a big step." "I see no other option," Caleb said, his voice strained. "Lily and Tom require a woman's guidance. I can't offer them that. And I need assistance." He finally met Jed's gaze, a flicker of raw vulnerability piercing his stoicism. "I only want what's best for them, Jed." Jed nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "All right, Caleb, I understand. You need a partner to lighten the load." He paused, adding with a rueful grin, "Just pray she's a better crook than you." Caleb managed a weak smile. Wouldn't take much. That evening, once the children were sound asleep, Caleb sat at his desk, a blank page and pen before him. The words seemed to mock his efforts, dancing in the lamplight's glow. He gnawed on the pen's end, searching for the right phrasing for his desperate appeal. At last, he began to write, his hand moving slowly, deliberately. He chronicled his life in redemption, the ranch, his duties maintaining order. He described Lily and Tom, their gentle spirits, their recent heartache. He sketched a portrait of a simple, honest existence, a life yearning for a kind, strong woman to complete it. He hesitated before adding a line about hoping for someone with culinary talent, but Ben included it, a touch of humour to leaven the earnestness. He signed the missive simply, Caleb Thorne, Sheriff of Redemption. He felt a spark of something resembling optimism, a fragile ember in the gloom. Weeks later, an envelope arrived, bearing a St. Louis postmark. Caleb recognized the graceful script immediately. His hands trembled slightly as he tore it open. Dear Mr. Thorne, it began. Your advertisement resonated deeply with me. I am a woman of modest means, seeking a fresh start and a place to call my own. I possess experience in nurturing children and managing a home. My name is Martha, and I would be honored to correspond further. The letter was concise, yet the tone, a quiet dignity underpinning the words, struck a chord within him. He reread it several times, a sense of guarded hope blossoming in his chest. Perhaps, just perhaps, this could prove fruitful. Maybe Martha was the beacon he sought. He settled down to reply, the words flowing more easily this time. He divulged more about Lily and Tom, their individual personalities and peculiar habits. He painted a vivid portrait of the ranch, its undulating terrain, the crystalline creek bisecting the land. He wanted her to enter with eyes wide open, to fully grasp the reality of his world. He concluded with a simple invitation. If you remain interested, Martha, I would be honored if you would consider journeying to redemption. I pledge to treat you with respect and kindness. And I dare say, life here is seldom monotonous. He sealed the envelope, a sense of anticipation rising within him. He walked to the post office, the letter clutched securely in his grip. As he deposited it in the mail slot, he closed his eyes and offered a silent plea. Please, let this succeed. Please, let Martha be the woman we desperately need. The sun blazed upon Harmony Gulch, turning the thoroughfare into a mirage of heat. Caleb Thorne adjusted his stance, his badge an unaccustomed weight against his chest. He'd buffed it too much already, a nervous tick refusing banishment. The stage was behind schedule, each tick of the clock amplifying the anxiety churning in his gut. He smoothed the fabric of his best shirt, reserved for solemn occasions, and flicked a glance at Jed Billings, who lounged against the general store, dispatching a stream of tobacco juice into the parched earth. Jed offered a knowing smirk. She'll rattle in, Caleb. Never seen one early. Caleb merely grunted, doubt clouding his features. It wasn't tardiness he feared, but her, Martha, the woman whose missives had portrayed a woman of piety and simplicity, yearning to build a home and ease the burdens of a lonesome lawman. He'd conjured an image of maternal warmth, hands roughened yet tender, someone to soothe Sarah's troubled sleep and guide young Thomas through his alphabet, perhaps to mend the tear in his soul left by Mary. A dust devil spiraled into view, heralding the thunder of approaching hooves and wheels. Caleb stiffened, his pulse a frantic drum against his ribs. The stagecoach careened into the settlement, horses flecked with foam, the driver wielding his whip like a conductor's baton. It screeched to a halt before the Golden Nugget Saloon, scattering dust and grit. The door creaked open, and Caleb moved forward, poised to welcome his future. But the figure descending from the coach bore no resemblance to his expectations. Statuesque and lithe, she possessed an undeniable air of self-possession. Her dark hair was arranged in an elegant coil, and her emerald gown, though road-worn, whispered of a life worlds away from these arid plains. She even wore gloves. Caleb's throat constricted, his meticulously crafted hopes collapsing like a sandcastle before the tide. This was not Martha. Her gaze swept over the town, her lips pursed in a mow of displeasure. A hint of disappointment, perhaps even disdain, flitted across her features. Then, her eyes met Caleb's, and her expression softened, replaced by a flicker of intrigue. "Sheriff Thorne?" she inquired, her voice a smooth, melodious cadence that hinted at a privileged upbringing. Tongue-tied, Caleb could only nod. He felt utterly foolish standing there in his Sunday finery, his rehearsed greeting lost in the dusty air. "There appears to be a misunderstanding," she continued, her gaze probing his. "I am Saraphina Moreau." Bewilderment washed over Caleb. "Moreau?" The name resonated with nothing. "But the letters Martha?" he stammered, his face burning. Saraphina sighed, a delicate sound jarring against the backdrop of Harmony Gulch. "It's a complicated tale, Sheriff. Perhaps we might discuss it in more suitable surroundings." She gestured vaguely towards the Golden Nugget, only to reconsider. On second thought, perhaps not. Jed Billings, never one to shrink from drama, sauntered over, his eyes aglow with undisguised nosiness. "Trouble brewing, Caleb?" he drawled, his tone oozing false concern. "No trouble, Jed," Caleb replied, striving to regain his composure. He turned back to Saraphina, his mind reeling. What in tarnation was going on? Had he fallen victim to a swindle? Was this some elaborate jest? "Miss Moreau," he began, forcing a polite smile. "I was anticipating someone else. A Miss Martha." His voice trailed off, each word compounding his sense of absurdity. Saraphina arched a perfectly sculpted brow. "Indeed. And I anticipated a humble homestead and a tranquil existence. It seems we both received considerably more than anticipated." Agnes Plumtree, the town's tireless gossip, waddled over, her eyes gleaming with unholy delight. "Well now, what's this?" she screeched, her voice an abrasive assault on the ears. "Has a fancy city bird flown in to befine our Caleb?" Caleb shot Agnes a warning glare. He needed no kindling added to this blaze. It was already a conflagration. "Miss Plumtree," Caleb ground out, "perhaps you could discover a more worthwhile pursuit." Undeterred, Agnes planted her hands on her substantial hips. "Just offering my help, Sheriff. Seems you've stumbled into a bit of a pickle." Saraphina, seemingly unfazed by the spectacle, offered Agnes a glacial smile. "Thank you for your solicitude, madam. I assure you, Sheriff Thorne and I are perfectly capable of resolving this pickle on our own." Despite his growing vexation, Caleb couldn't help but be impressed by her composure. Though clearly out of her comfort zone, she handled the situation with a grace and poise that he found both intriguing and unnerving. He inhaled deeply, seeking to gather his scattered thoughts. He needed to extract her from the town's relentless scrutiny. He needed to comprehend the truth why this refined woman had arrived instead of the plain, devout Martha with whom he'd corresponded. "Miss Moreau," he said, his voice regaining a semblance of authority. "If you'll permit me, I would like to offer you what little hospitality I can. My home is modest, but it's the best I can provide. We can discuss this misunderstanding in private." Saraphina hesitated, her eyes flitting over his face, seeking answers to silent questions. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Very well, Sheriff. Lead the way." Caleb lifted her valise, surprised by its heft, and guided her toward his small dwelling on the town's periphery, leaving Jed and Agnes to their whispered theories and conjectures. As they walked, he couldn't shake the certainty that his life had veered onto an unforeseen course. He'd sought a wife, a mother for his children, a partner to share his days. He'd wanted stability and predictability. Instead, he found Saraphina Moreau, and he suspected nothing would ever be quite the same. Stealing a glance, he noticed her gaze fixed on the horizon, a blend of trepidation and resolve etched on her face. He wondered what secrets she guarded, what circumstances had brought her to Harmony Gulch, and why she had responded to his advertisement under a fabricated identity. He also wondered, despite the chaos and confusion, if this unforeseen arrival might be precisely what he and his family truly needed. Yet, the thought felt like a perilous indulgence, a fragile bloom of hope in a world that had accustomed him to disappointment. The air in Caleb's office reeked of saddle soap and dialed cigarillos. Saraphina faced him across the desk, the sunlight painting the spun gold embroidery of her dress into deceptive highlights. The chair groaned as he leaned back. "You're not Martha," he stated, the words stripped bare. Saraphina offered no apology. "No, Sheriff, I am not. Saraphina Moreau." A slight pause, then her fingers worried the skirt's hem. "And I'm afraid I've complicated things for you considerably." Caleb waited, a patience forged in the crucible of the plains now vital against the storm that had swept into Harmony Gulch. "The advertisement, your proposal, it represented an escape," she whispered. "A necessary flight. From what?" His voice was a low rasp. Saraphina inhaled sharply and turned to the window, her back a rigid line. "I acquired unwelcome attention. Powerful men who brook no opposition." He pushed back from the desk, the floorboards responding with a complaint. He circled her slowly, like a hawk eyeing its quarry. "Opposition in what form, Miss Moreau?" Her face had lost all colour. "I became a privy to their dealings, saw things they prefer remain unseen." A shiver traversed her spine. "I had to vanish, reinvent myself." Martha offered the swiftest path to obscurity. Caleb scrutinized her, seeking a crack in her facade. The apprehension in her eyes felt authentic. He saw not a swindler, but a woman grasping at straws. Sarah and little Thomas flashed through his mind. Their innocent faces wreathed in sunshine and mischief. He'd envisioned the mother for them, a steady hand. Instead, he'd invited a fugitive into their lives. He returned to his desk, the weight of the situation pressing on him. "You comprehend the predicament this creates, Miss Moreau?" "I uphold the law here." "Sheltering someone on the run, I understand," she interjected, her voice thick with anxiety. "I never intended to involve you. I planned to move on quickly. But then I met your niece and nephew, and I witnessed the goodness in you, Sheriff. I couldn't perpetuate the lie. He needed his pap." Temples. A headache blooming behind his eyes. He imagined her aboard that stagecoach, exposed and vulnerable, a lone dove amidst predators. He envisioned the men pursuing her, their features indistinct, their purpose chillingly clear. "Tell me everything," he commanded, his voice a gravelly demand. "Spare me no detail." Saraphina hesitated, then plunged in. The tale she revealed was a Gordian knot of duplicity, betrayal, and veiled threats. She recounted opulent gatherings in shadowy salons, cryptic dialogues and furtive glances. She spoke of ledgers thick with names and figures, of secrets potent enough to shatter empires. and the creeping car. Dread, the burgeoning terror culminating in her desperate flight. Sleep remained a distant shore that night. Caleb lay awake, the shadows in the room performing the carved dances on the walls. Saraphina's revelations echoed in his martin head, each syllable a blow against his carefully ordered world. He recalled the day his sister and her husband perished, a pointless tragedy that had bequeathed him Sarah and Thomas. He'd vowed to safeguard them, to nurture their well-being. He'd even deluded himself that a mail-order bride was the answer, a pragmatic solution. Now, the answer was a woman hunted by shadows, dragging danger into his home. He thrashed in the sheets, Sarah's radiant smile clashing with the stark reality. Could he gamble his family's security for a woman he barely knew? Could he expose her to the wolves circling? He rose and went to the window. The moon, a spectral eye, cast long, distorted silhouettes across the town. He could almost feel the townsfolk's gaze, assessing his next move. He thought of his father, a beacon of integrity, a man who prioritized right over easy. He recalled tales of the Wild West, the struggle between order and chaos. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he couldn't abandon Saraphina. He couldn't consign her to Tao. A life on the run. He was a sheriff. Yes, but also a man of conscience. He simply needed a plan. Flashback the alley was a miasma of stale beer and desperation. Saraphina flattened herself against the clammy brick, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The strains of music and laughter from the party receded, replaced by the ragged rhythm of her breath. She gripped the small satchel containing her meagre savings and the purloined ledger. Her only weapon, her only hope. She'd overheard their hushed conversations, the men who dictated her existence. They knew she possessed dangerous knowledge. They were plotting her demise. A wave of paralyzing panic washed over her. She could barely breathe, barely think. She knew only that she had to escape. She'd slipped from the ballroom, swallowed by the crowd. She'd navigated the mansion's intricate passages, her steps muffled by thick carpets. She'd found the back entrance, the servants' portal, and fled into the night. The city was a labyrinth of shadows. She had no destination, no allies. Only the raw instinct to survive propelled her. She remembered finding a discarded newspaper, its pages stained and ripped. Her eyes had devoured the advertisements, searching for a sign, a lifeline. And then she saw it. Wife wanted. Honest sheriff in Harmony Gulch, Wyoming. A slim chance. A desperate leap of faith. But her only chance. She'd penned the letter, carefully obscuring her handwriting, fabricating a history, a persona. She'd prayed it would suffice. Now, in Caleb Thorne's office, she knew the gamble had paid off. At least for now. But the peril was far from over. Her pursuers wouldn't relent, and she'd inadvertently entangled an innocent family in her web. End flashback the following morning, Caleb found Saraphina braiding Sarah's hair, inserting a daisy into the plate while Thomas played at her feet with a tin soldier. The tableau was so utterly domestic, so ordinary. It bordered on the surreal. He watched, a sudden ache of longing constricting his chest. This was the life he craved, but it was built on a lie, atop quicksand. He cleared his throat, and Saraphina's face shuttered with apprehension. He saw the ever-present fear, guarded watchfulness. "We need to talk," he said quietly. He guided her back to his office, the peaceful scene evaporating like morning dew. He shut the door, the click echoing in the silence. "I've considered what you told me," he started, his darted gaze unwavering. "And I've reached a decision." Saraphina held her breath, waiting. "I'm going to assist you," he said. Relief washed over her, chased by incredulity. You are? You are? Under my conditions, he continued, his tone firm. You remain here, in Harmony Gulch. You maintain the guise of Martha. You care for Sarah and Thomas. And you keep a low profile. No more secrets, no more prevarications. But the danger, she stammered. I'm the sheriff, he stated, a thread of steel in his tone. I can offer protection. But you must trust me. Saraphina searched his gaze. She found honesty, determination, and something indefinable. A hint of possibility. Lily's small hand, roughened by daily tasks yet surprisingly tender, settled on Saraphina's arm. Sunlight poured through the parlour window, igniting a silent dance of dust motes and bathing the well-loved pages of Treasure Island in honeyed light. Saraphina's voice, a bomb in the quiet room, conjured Long John Silver and Jim Hawkins with carefully articulated words. Lily, eyes wide and luminous, remained fixed on Saraphina, absorbing every inflection, utterly spellbound. And then, Saraphina narrated, tracing the script with a fingertip. The pirates, driven by avarice, betrayed each other, any pretense of unity dissolving. She paused, her gaze meeting Lily's. Loyalty is a rare gem, Lilybug, bestowed with care. Lily nodded, a thoughtful crease marring her brow. Like Tom feels the Caleb? She piped, her voice a mere thread. Saraphina offered a radiant, unreserved smile that fanned out from the corners of her eyes. Precisely, like Tom's devotion to Caleb, and Caleb's for you and Tom. Unseen, Caleb leaned against the doorframe, observing the tableau. The sight of Lily, lost in Saraphina's thrall, stirred something profound within him. He hadn't witnessed such animation from her since before the loss of their parents. He banished the sombre thought, a familiar ache settling in his chest. He couldn't help but detect a tremor in Saraphina's hand as she spoke of loyalty, a transient shadow clouding her features. What betrayals had she endured, he wondered, that led to such a weighty burden? Could he ever truly earn her confidence? Later, Caleb discovered Tom, huddled over his small table, deeply engrossed in a drawing. The boy's tongue peeked from the corner of his mouth as he meticulously applied colour. The subject was immediately clear. A woman with cascading hair, a gentle smile, and a simple gown. Martha, Caleb murmured, acknowledging the obvious. Tom flinched, his hand momentarily still. He kept his gaze fixed on his work. Her hair is supposed to be brown, he mumbled, barely audible. The real Martha's. Caleb knelt, his large frame feeling cumbersome in the confined space. Tom, he said softly. Martha Saraphina is here now. She's staying with us. Tom slammed the crayon down, the tip shearing off with a muted snap. He finally met Caleb's eyes, brimming with a mix of resentment and confusion. She's not Martha, he exclaimed, his voice cracking with emotion. Martha wouldn't know about pirates and treasure islands. Martha baked cookies and sewed. Caleb sighed, raking a hand through his hair. Words seemed inadequate. He understood Tom's disorientation, his yearning for the idealized woman he had constructed in his imagination. He felt a flicker of that same desire himself. He'd imagined a placid domestic presence, not a storm of secrets and keen intellect. She reads good pa, and knows lots of stories. Lily interjected, appearing suddenly in the doorway, her face alight. She told me all about pirates. Can we get a parrot, pa? Pretty please. Tom shot Lily a glare. You like her already? Did you forget Martha so quick? Lily's expression dimmed. No, I didn't. But Saraphina is nice. Tom averted his gaze, tears welling in his eyes. I don't want her, he whispered. I want the real Martha. Caleb enfolded Tom in a hug, feeling the boy's small frame shudder against him. I know, son, he soothed. I know. He glanced at Lily, who watched with a worried air. He offered a reassuring smile, though he felt far from composed. That evening, after the children were asleep, Caleb found Saraphina on the porch, lost in contemplation of the star-dusted expanse above. The air held a refreshing chill, laced with the earthy aroma of pine and damp soil. He hesitated, unsure how to begin. They're good kids, Caleb, she observed softly, without turning. You're fortunate to have them. Caleb settled onto the porch swing, the wood groaning softly under his weight. I know, he agreed. I am. A pause followed. Tom's struggling to adapt. Saraphina sighed. I anticipated as much. I'm not precisely what you, or he, envisioned, am I? Caleb cringed inwardly. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She countered, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes, usually shielded and piercing, revealed a surprising vulnerability. Tell me, Caleb, what did you expect? He looked away, his attention drawn to the distant mountains etched against the night. I imagined someone less complicated. Someone who wouldn't stir things up so much. Saraphina offered a dry, mirthless chuckle. And I have most certainly done that, haven't I? Yes, he conceded, meeting her direct gaze. But not necessarily for the worse. She arched an eyebrow, a spark of her characteristic defiance resurfacing. Is that so, Sheriff? Are you beginning to suspect that perhaps, just perhaps, you received more than you bargained for? He didn't respond immediately. He studied her, truly observed the intelligence in her gaze, the strength etched in her jawline, the fragility concealed beneath her resilient facade. He saw a woman forged in hardship, burdened by secrets, yet also capable of remarkable kindness and empathy. Maybe, he answered at last, a slow smile dawning on his face. Maybe I did. He hesitated, a sudden realization striking him. Maybe, that's precisely what I needed. Saraphina searched his expression, her own remaining indecipherable. After a protracted moment, she looked back towards the heavens. Don't raise your hopes, Sheriff, she said quietly. I'm not certain I'm capable of providing what anyone needs. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers, without making contact. The intention, however, was unmistakable. We'll see, he murmured. We'll just have to wait and see. Silence hung in the air, thick with unspoken emotions and lingering questions. The night deepened, the temperature dropped, yet neither stirred. They remained there, side by side, two strangers linked by circumstance and a shared yearning for renewal, each bearing their invisible wounds, each hoping, against the odds, for a future yet unformed. Golden light spilled across the primer as Saraphina guided Lily's gaze with a delicate finger. Perched on a garden stone cushioned with moss, Lily scrunched her features in fierce concentration. "A apple," she declared, her face radiant with accomplishment. Saraphina's smile bloomed, an unreserved expression that banished the shadows lurking in her eyes. "Excellent, Lily. This one?" The humid air, fragrant with honeysuckle and warm earth, buzzed with the drone of bees as Lily eyed the next word. Her fingertip traced its form. "Bee-ball?" "Close," Saraphina murmured, correcting with kindness. "It's Bat," she articulated with precision, encouraging Lily to imitate. The girl stumbled, the concluding T proving a challenge. Saraphina refrained from pushing, instead patiently illustrating the correct tongue placement. From the kitchen's aperture, Evelyn Abernathy surveyed the scene, her lips pressed into a disapproving line. The clang of her cookware seemed amplified, a jarring contrast to the gentle cadence of Seraphina's tutoring. Later, as Caleb wrestled with a nearly indecipherable ledger at the supper table, Evelyn seized the opportunity to speak with him privately. Upstairs, Tom's door slammed with its usual adolescent fury, a ritual since Seraphina's arrival. Lily, oblivious, chatted excitedly about her lesson, still grappling with the word bat. "Caleb," Evelyn began, her tone tight with censure. "We need to discuss Martha." Caleb massaged the bridge of his nose, steeling himself. He knew Evelyn's predictable patterns, the storm brewing beneath her placid surface. "What troubles you, Evelyn?" "This instruction," she said, setting a plate of biscuits down with rigid movements. "Lily is a dear child, but she needs to understand her station. Reading and writing those are pursuits for men. It will clutter her mind with fanciful dreams, breed dissatisfaction." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Dissatisfaction? Evelyn, she's simply learning. Where is the harm?" "Harm?" A sharper edge crept into Evelyn's voice. "It's unnatural, Caleb. A woman's domain is the home, nurturing her family, not burying herself in books. And what will the neighbours think? We don't want to give people the wrong impression." A spark of annoyance flickered within Caleb. He respected Evelyn's counsel, valued her long-standing presence, yet her inflexible views often clashed with his inherent sense of justice. "Let the town think what it may. I want Lily to have every advantage." He glanced at Saraphina, silently clearing dishes, her face a closed book. He wondered if she overheard. Evelyn persisted, her voice steeped in concern. "But Caleb, consider Martha's origins. Are you certain of where? She acquired her own literacy?" Caleb's jaw hardened. He wasn't naive. He suspected Saraphina harbored secrets, yet he refused to let Evelyn's suspicions dictate his judgment. "That's enough. Evelyn, Saraphina is helping Lily, and I am grateful. I will not tolerate you questioning her integrity within my home." Evelyn recoiled, her face flushing. "I only have your best interests at heart, Caleb. The children's too." "I understand," Caleb conceded, his tone softening. "But this I can manage." The following evening, the town hall throbbed with the usual blend of complaints and local law. Caleb loathed these assemblies. A necessary evil. A space for voicing concerns and shaping policy, they frequently descended into petty bickering and thinly disguised barbs. This night, however, an unusual intensity permeated the air. Agnes Plumtree, the town's resident gossip, rose to her feet, her voice piercing. "Sheriff Thorne," she began, malice glinting in her eyes, "there has been talk about your bride. About her teaching Lily to read." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Caleb held his ground, his gaze unwavering. "And what of it, Agnes?" Well, Agnes went on, her tone thick with insinuation. "Some of us are concerned. Is it appropriate? Is it seemly? And what sort of education is she imparting anyway? Where did she even learn her letters?" A chorus of objections swelled, a wave of disapproval and distrust. Caleb felt Saraphina tense beside him. Under the table, he took her hand, offering unspoken reassurance. He stood, his towering frame casting a long shadow. The murmuring died down, replaced by expectant silence. "Saraphina is a kind and intelligent woman," he declared, his voice clear and strong. She's brought a light into this house that has been absent since Lily and Tom's mother passed. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Public speaking, especially on personal matters, was foreign to him. He favoured action over words, but he knew he had to defend Saraphina, not merely for her sake, but for Lily's and Dean. Tom's too. I invited Saraphina here, he continued. I needed assistance with the children. And she has been a blessing. She is teaching Lily, and she is aiding Tom in ways I cannot even comprehend. And if she wishes to instruct Lily in reading, then I wholeheartedly endorse it. Education is never detrimental. He surveyed the room, meeting each gaze. As for the source of her literacy, that is her private matter. But I can assure you this. She is teaching Lily to be virtuous, to be inquisitive, to be self-reliant. And that is all that matters to me. He resumed his seat, the silence thick. He felt Seraphina's hand trembling within his. He squeezed it gently. The meeting continued. Yet the animosity had waned, replaced by a begrudging admiration. Later that night, as they relaxed on the porch, observing fireflies winking in the darkness, Seraphina turned to Caleb, her eyes reflecting both pain, gratitude, and unease. Thank you, she breathed, for defending me. Caleb shrugged, discomfited by her praise. You needed no defense. You were in the right. They had no authority to judge you. But they do, she said softly. They don't know me. They know nothing about me. Caleb regarded her, his gaze searching. He perceived the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability she guarded so fiercely. Then tell them, he urged gently. Tell me. Seraphina hesitated, her gaze drawn to the distant horizon. The weight of her history bore down on her, threatening to overwhelm her. It's not that simple, Caleb, she said, her voice almost lost. It's not something, quote. I can simply explain. Caleb knew she spoke the truth. He knew her secrets ran deep and threatened danger. But he also knew he felt drawn to her. To her resilience, her intellect, her quiet empathy, and he was prepared to wait, to earn her confidence, to aid her in bearing her burdens, whatever they might be. He reached for her hand once more, his touch firm, assuring. Then don't, he said. Not yet. But know this, Seraphina. I am on your side. Whatever may come, I will be here. Crickets chirped their sombre melody, the sole sound in the vast solitude of the night. As two wary hearts forged a tentative connection beneath the boundless canopy of the western sky, the dust swirled like restless spirits as the stagecoach rattled to a halt in front of Billings General Store. A man disembarked. A figure carved from shadow and steel. He was tall, lean, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Silas Blackwood, though the name he offered Agnes Plumtree inside was simply Mr. Smith. Agnes, perched behind the counter, straightened her spectacles and puffed out her chest, eager for news and a new face. Well now, Mr. Smith, she chirped, her voice a touch too loud. What brings you to Harmony, if I may be so bold? Silas leaned against the counter, his gaze sweeping the cluttered shelves. Passing through, he said, his voice a low rumble. Heard it was a quiet place. Looking for information, mostly. Information? Agnes's eyes widened. Information was her stock in trade. About what, pray tell? A woman, Silas said, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. Came through here a while back. Might have even settled. He paused, letting the silence thicken. Answers to the name Martha. Or perhaps she's using another. He watched Agnes carefully, gauging her reaction. Agnes's brow furrowed in thought. She loved a good mystery. Martha, no one by that name springs to mind. But She tapped a finger to her chin. There's the new sheriff's wife. Came as a mail-order bride. Saraphina, she's called. Agnes leaned forward conspiratorially. A bit different, if you catch my drift. Reads books, teaches the children. Some say she's too educated for her own good. Silas's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. Saraphina, he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. What does she look like? Agnes launched into a detailed description, her voice laced with thinly veiled disapproval. Dark hair, almost black, and eyes you can't quite figure out. Always wears those fancy dresses. Too good for our humble town, if you ask me. And that air about her, like she's hiding something. Across the street, leaning against the post office, Caleb watched. He'd seen the stage arrive and the stranger disembark. There was something about the man's posture, the way he scanned the surroundings, that set Caleb's teeth on edge. He couldn't hear the conversation, but he saw Agnes's animated gestures, her head bobbing like a woodpecker. And he saw the stranger's intense focus. A cold dread settled in Caleb's gut. He knew trouble when he saw it, and this man radiated it like a furnace. He pushed himself off the post and began to casually stroll toward the general store, his hand instinctively drifting toward the butt of his revolver. He tried to appear nonchalant, just another townsman passing by, but his senses were on high alert. He caught a glimpse of the stranger's face, sharp, angular, with eyes that held no warmth. The man turned slightly, and Caleb could see the way he was looking at Agnes. It was like the predator sizing up its prey. Caleb quickened his pace, his boots drumming softly on the dusty street. He needed to get closer, to hear what was being said. He reached the edge of the boardwalk just as Silas finished his questioning and turned to leave the store. Their eyes met. For a fleeting moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Silas's gaze was like a shard of ice, piercing and assessing. Caleb met his stare unflinchingly, projecting an aura of calm authority. Then, just as quickly, the moment passed. Silas offered a curt nod and stepped out onto the boardwalk, heading in the opposite direction. Caleb entered the store, his gaze immediately locking on Agnes. "Who was that?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Agnes, flustered, adjusted her spectacles. "Just a traveller, Sheriff. Asking about your wife, actually." Caleb's jaw tightened. "What did he ask?" Agnes recounted the conversation, her voice trembling slightly under Caleb's intense gaze. "He was looking for a woman named Martha. Said she might be using another name." Caleb listened in silence, his mind racing. He knew Saraphina was hiding something, running from something. This man, whoever he was part of that past. And he was here, in harmony, threatening to shatter the fragile peace they had begun to build. He thanked Agnes, his tone curt, and left the store. He scanned the street, but Silas had vanished. He felt a surge of protectiveness, a primal urge to shield Saraphina and the children from the encroaching darkness. He had to warn her. Meanwhile, Saraphina was in the garden behind the thorn house, tending to the small patch of vegetables she had painstakingly cultivated. The sun was warm on her skin, and the scent of herbs filled the air. It was a moment of tranquility, a brief respite from the anxieties that gnawed at her. Lily and Tom were playing nearby, their laughter a sweet melody. She looked up, drawn by a sudden prickling sensation on the back of her neck. Across the field, near the edge of the woods, she saw him. Silas Blackwood. He stood motionless, his figure silhouetted against the trees, his eyes fixed on her. Recognition slammed into her like a physical blow, stealing her breath. The colour drained from her face, and her hands began to tremble. It couldn't be. He couldn't have found her. But there he was, a spectre from her past, come to claim her. She forced herself to take a deep breath, trying to regain control. She had to think. Panic would only make things worse. She glanced at Lily and Tom, their innocent faces a stark reminder of what she stood to lose. She turned away from Silas, pretending not to see him. She called to the children, her voice strained but steady. "Lily, Tom, come inside. It's time for your lessons." As she ushered them into the house, she risked another glance. Silas was gone. But she knew he was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting. The tranquility of the afternoon had shattered, replaced by a chilling premonition. The past had arrived in harmony, and it was hunting her down. The aroma of resin and spent firewood clung to Caleb as the door clicked shut, the sound amplified by the sudden hush within the house. Saraphina sat in the parlour, gilded by the sun's descent, an unread book resting on her lap. The air around her thrummed with an almost palpable anxiety. Caleb crossed to the hearth, each step a muted challenge to the apprehension that coiled within him. He feigned interest in the glowing coals, though the fire burned perfectly well. "He inquired after you," he murmured, his tone measured. "A Mr. Smith. Asked if I knew a Martha, new to these parts." Seraphina's intake of breath was nearly imperceptible, yet enough for Caleb to register the blow. She remained fixed on the printed page. The silence deepened, heavy as a shroud, broken only by the fire's gentle pops. "Saraphina," he persisted, softening his voice, concern colouring his words. "Who is he, really?" At last she met his gaze, her eyes vast and haunted, mirrors reflecting the dwindling light. He glimpsed the terror she usually kept under lock and key, a stark, visceral emotion that shattered her composure. He's a spectre from my former life," she breathed. Caleb closed the distance between them, kneeling beside her chair and enfolding her hand in his. Her fingers were like ice, trembling minutely. "A past you've kept hidden from me. Not an accusation, simply a statement of fact." Her eyelids fluttered shut, a lone tear escaping to carve a glistening path down her cheek. "It's deeply tangled, Caleb, and perilous. To involve you risks you and the children." He tightened his grip, his rough hand offering a silent reassurance. "I wear the badge, Saraphina. Protection is my duty. And you're my wife." He paused, the title still novel on his tongue. "I deserve to know the enemy we face." She opened her eyes, her gaze probing his, searching for the bedrock of his resolve. "His name isn't Smith. It's Silas Blackwood. He's an agent of my father." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Your father? I understood you that I was an orphan?" "It's a convenient fiction, a shield." She inhaled unsteadily. "My father wields considerable power, Caleb. Immense power. He orchestrates events on a grand scale." She hesitated, her voice barely audible. "People vanish who cross him." A shiver traced Caleb's spine, a cold harbinger of the danger she had unwittingly ushered into their sanctuary. "What does he desire?" "Me," she whispered, her voice devoid of colour. "He wants me returned. He aims to bind me in marriage to a man of his choosing, someone who will amplify his influence." "And you fled?" Her nod was sharp, her jaw clenched. "I couldn't. I wouldn't. I craved a life of my own making. I yearned to sculpt my own destiny." A spark of defiance flared in her gaze, reminding him of the indomitable woman he had grown to cherish. He believes a woman is an adornment, not a voice. But her sole worth lies in her capacity to bear heirs and elevate his societal rank. She trailed off, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I aspired to more than that, Caleb. I yearned to learn, to reason, to offer something of value to the world." His thoughts drifted to her laden bookshelves, the care she took in educating Lily, her keen mind and insatiable thirst for knowledge. He couldn't envision her imprisoned in a gilded cage, a mere bauble in her father's ruthless game. "What manner of enterprise is your father engaged in?" he inquired, hesitant to intrude, yet compelled to grasp the scope of the menace. Her eyes averted, locked on the flickering flames, her face etched with anguish. "He commands everything: mines, railways, financial institutions. He manipulates the very lifeblood of commerce in multiple states. He's merciless, Caleb, unstoppable in his pursuits." He rose, pacing before the hearth, his thoughts racing. He was a rural sheriff, accustomed to livestock theft and petty criminality. This was a different order of magnitude altogether. He pictured Lily and Tom, slumbering peacefully upstairs, their innocent visages oblivious to the threat encroaching on their home. He halted, turning to Saraphina, his expression grave. "He knows our location." She inclined her head, her shoulders sagging. "I always suspected he would, eventually. I merely hoped. I hoped for a reprieve, a moment of tranquility." He knelt before her once more, cradling both her hands in his. "That moment is now, and you have me. I will not permit him to reclaim you, Saraphina. I swear it." His voice rang with conviction. An oath etched deep within the cerulean depths of his eyes. "I care not for the extent of his power. He will not touch you. He will not lay a hand on my family." A tentative smile graced her lips, a fragile ember of hope in the gloom. "You underestimate the forces arrayed against you, Caleb." "Caleb." "Perhaps," he conceded, "but I learn quickly, and I possess the tenacity of a badger." "He desires a fight. I can brawl with the best of them." He paused, his gaze softening. "Unburden yourself, Saraphina. Tell me everything regarding your father, regarding Silas Blackwood, regarding any detail that might aid me in safeguarding you. We shall confront this together." She searched his face, her eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions, terror and gratitude warring within their depths. I do not wish to imperil you." He framed her face with his hands, his thumbs gently caressing her cheeks. "You are not jeopardizing me. You are my family. And I will forever defend my family. Always." She leaned into his embrace, her eyes closing, another tear escaping, this one a testament to something indecipherable. Relief, thankfulness, fear, still lurking in the shadows. He couldn't be sure, but he knew one truth. He would stand by her, come what may. He would confront whatever darkness she had introduced into their lives, and he would exhaust every resource to ensure her security. And he would begin by listening, by deciphering the whispers of her history, the secrets that threatened to engulf them all. The fire popped and spat, casting restless shadows on the walls. As Saraphina began to speak, her voice trembling, the words pouring forth, a flood of confessions and apprehensions that washed over the room, scattering the silence and summoning the storm. The fire in the hearth crackled, its deceptive warmth painting the kitchen walls with flickering shadows. Tom, ostensibly sharpening his knife, strained to catch the murmur of voices seeping from Caleb's study. A disquiet had plagued him since supper, a knot twisting in his stomach. Though the hushed tones and fragmented phrases remained elusive, a chilling certainty gripped him. It concerned Saraphina. He'll stop at nothing. Saraphina's voice, though a mere thread, held a raw, unfamiliar terror. "Caleb, you underestimate his reach." Caleb's response, a deep grounding resonance, offered reassurance, yet firmness. "He won't touch you, Saraphina. Not on my watch." Tom's hand tightened on the nice wood, a wave of unease washing over him. Saraphina's arrival, her seamless entry into their lives, had always struck a discordant note. Too smooth. Too pat. When he'd voiced his reservations to Lily, she, captivated by Saraphina's seeming benevolence and affection, dismissed them as paranoia. Now, eavesdropping on this clandestine exchange, his suspicions crystallized. What influence did she wield over Caleb? What clandestine truths did she harbor? He'd witnessed the adoration and fierce protectiveness in Caleb's gaze, an emotion alien to the brother he knew. It was as if Saraphina had spun a captivating illusion, entangling herself into their lives with threads of calculated charm. "You're underestimating his ruthlessness," Saraphina persisted, her voice edging towards desperation. "He can erase people, wreck lives." "Then we'll stand ready," Caleb countered, steel entering his tone. "We'll face him. Together." The words lingered, heavy with unspoken implications. Tom's pulse quickened. Face whom? And for what cause? Bewilderment churned within him, yet one truth cut through the confusion. Saraphina posed a danger. She was weaving a tapestry of deception, and Caleb, ever the honest soul, was ensnared. He couldn't bear it. He couldn't stand idly by as she manipulated his brother, jeopardizing them all. He had to intervene. He had to shield his kin, even against Caleb's will. Setting the knife down with a soft clink that seemed to echo in the sudden stillness from the study, he slipped out the back door. The cool night air, a bracing balm against his agitated thoughts, greeted him. He gravitated towards the ancient oak at the edge of their land, its contorted branches reaching toward the star-dusted expanse like bony fingers. Tucked beneath its roots, in a hollow he'd carved years ago, lay his century. A well-worn, leather-bound sketchbook. He retrieved it, his fingers gliding over the faded cover. Within were drawings, impressions of the world meticulously rendered in charcoal and ink. Yet, one subject dominated, filling page after page. Martha. He leafed through the pages, pausing at a particularly detailed portrait, drawn from memory. He'd striven to capture every nuance of her face, the gentle curve of her mouth, the radiant spark in her eyes. Absence hadn't dimmed the clarity of her image. It was as though she stood before him. "Martha," he breathed, his voice thick with yearning. "I miss you. I need you now more than ever." Tracing the contours of her face, a tidal wave of longing washed over him. He recalled her letters, brimming with tales of her new life, her aspirations, her dreams. A lifeline, a connection to a world beyond their insular existence. Then, silence. The letters ceased. Saraphina claimed to be Martha, but the woman inhabiting Caleb's house, the woman haunted by shadows and cloaked in falsehoods, was not the sister he cherished. She was an impostor, a fabrication, and he vowed to expose her. He flipped to a pristine page, his hand trembling slightly as he grasped a charcoal stick. He began to sketch, his brow furrowed in concentration. Though his cause remained undefined, he knew he could no longer remain here, not while Saraphina held Caleb captive. He would seek the real Martha. It was owed to Caleb, to Lily, and to the memory of his sister. As he drew, a plan began to coalesce. Risky, perhaps even reckless, but the only path he could envision. He would depart in the morning, before dawn stirred. He would carry only essentials: his sketchbook, provisions, and his mount. He would retrace the old stagecoach route, the one Martha had followed years ago. He would inquire, reveal his drawings, and pray that someone, somewhere, recognized her. The journey would be arduous, fraught with peril. The world stretched vast and unpredictable, yet his resolve remained unyielding. He would not rest until he unearthed Martha and shattered Saraphina's charade, restoring tranquility to his family. The charcoal crumbled in his grasp as he finished the sketch, his eyes gleaming with a fixed determination. He returned the sketchbook to its hiding place, and his steps back toward the house were firm and purposeful. A lengthy night lay ahead, preparing for the journey and bolstering his resolve. He was prepared to confront whatever awaited him, for the sake of his family, for Martha's memory, and for the truth. He had to find the real Martha. Saraphina would be unmasked. Caleb would be saved. He slipped back inside, unnoticed, unheard. He entered his room, his heart hammering. He packed a meager bag, his movements economical. He couldn't confide in Caleb or Lily. They wouldn't grasp the necessity. He had to act alone. He lay on his bed, fully clothed, and stared blankly at the ceiling. Sleep remained elusive. Martha, Saraphina, Caleb. Their images flooded his mind. The risk he was undertaking was immense, yet he couldn't quell the conviction that his course was righteous. He was protecting his family, even unbeknownst to them. The morning's frigid air nipped at Caleb as he stepped onto the porch. Usually, the scent of Seraphina's baking offered a comforting welcome, yet today a disquieting weight settled in his stomach. Tom was absent, his bed upstairs made with an unsettling precision, unlike the usual chaos of a boy eager to greet the chickens at sunrise. Saraphina? Caleb's cool held a carefully concealed worry. She appeared at the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Not at the barn, I suppose. He vowed to assist with the egg gathering. Caleb shook his head. Haven't, and his rifle is missing. The blood seemed to drain from Seraphina's complexion. Missing? But why? Her voice faded, a dawning comprehension widening her eyes. He doubts me, doesn't he? About Martha? Drawn by the escalating voices, Lily peeked from behind Seraphina's skirts. Where's Tom going? She asked, her voice a small, anxious thing. Kneeling, Caleb enveloped Lily in a reassuring hug. Just a little outing, sweetheart. He'll be back shortly. He pasted on a smile, but Lily's sharp gaze pierced the charade. No, he won't, she murmured, tears beginning to glisten. He mentioned Martha wouldn't favour me any more if she returned. Seraphina inhaled sharply, her hand covering her mouth. A wave of anger toward Tom surged through Caleb, quickly overwhelmed by a crushing anxiety. He stood abruptly. Jedediah, he bellowed, his voice shattering the morning's tranquility. Jedediah Billings, as always an early riser and the town's vocal messenger, emerged from his neighbouring cottage, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. One in Caleb, trouble brewing? Tom's vanished, took his rifle. Your help is needed. Muster some men. We must locate him. The news ripped through Redemption like a sudden squall. Within an hour, a small search party had congregated, concern etched on their faces. Caleb, jaw clenched, organised the effort. Jed, take the eastward path. Look toward Blackwood Creek. Johnson, you and Miller head west, toward the abandoned logging camp. Seraphina, Lily, and I will canvass the town, then proceed north toward Widow. M.C. Gregor's farm. As they combed the town, Caleb queried shopkeepers and passers-by, his anxiety amplified with each fruitless inquiry. Seraphina, clutching Lily's hand, scrutinized every alley, her face ashen. He's merely a boy, Caleb, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Out there, all alone. Caleb rested a hand on her arm, his touch unusually gentle. We'll find him, Seraphina, we will. But the assurance rang hollow, even to himself. Hours drifted by, the sun arcing higher, casting long, accusatory shadows. There was no sign of Tom. no indication of his direction. The simmering fear within Caleb boiled over into a full-blown panic. They rode northward, Saraphina's shoulders slumped with weariness, Lily silent and withdrawn into herself. Nearing the crest of a rise overlooking Widow May Screggle's land, Caleb reined in his horse. "We need a break," he said, his voice roughened. And some thought he wouldn't simply disappear. He helped Saraphina dismount, then lifted Lily down. The child immediately sought Saraphina, burying her face in her skirts. Saraphina sank to the ground, leaning against the rough bark of an ancient oak. "This is all on me," she whispered, her voice thick with anguish. "If I hadn't come here, if I hadn't deceived him." Caleb knelt beside her, taking her hand. "Don't say that, Saraphina. Tom's merely obstinate. And frightened. He'll understand." "But what if he doesn't?" she countered, her eyes searching his. "What if he's hurt? What if—" The unspoken fear hung between them. A palpable weight. Drawing her close, Caleb wrapped his arms around her and Lily. "We'll find him, Saraphina. I promise you. We'll bring him home." He held her fast, feeling the tremors that racked her body. He understood this extended beyond Tom. It touched her past. The concealed secrets. The constant dread that stalked her. He leaned back, cupping her face. "Tell me," he urged, his voice low and intense. "Tell me everything, the truth of who you are, what you're running from. Perhaps it can aid us in finding him." Saraphina hesitated, her eyes filled with a conflict of terror and yearning. She glanced at Lily, her innocent gaze fixed on them. Then, drawing a deep breath, she released the torrent of confession that had grown within her for weeks. She revealed her father, his dominance, his lack of compassion, the existence she had escaped, and the identity she had shed. She spoke of the pursuers on her trail, those who would stop at nothing to retrieve her. Caleb listened intently, his grip tightening on her hands. A wave of protectiveness washed over him, a burning determination to safeguard her and Lily from looming dangers. He realized his affections for Saraphina ran much deeper than he had acknowledged, that she had become irreplaceable, part of his very family. By the time she finished, the sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the land. The air had turned colder, and a sense of grim anticipation settled around them. "We will find him," Caleb repeated, his voice strong. "And whatever comes next, Saraphina, we will face it together. You, me, and Lily. We are family now, and families endure." He drew her close once more, holding her tight. In that moment, surrounded by the vast, unyielding wilderness, they found solace in each other's embrace, a fragile connection forged in fear and uncertainty. The search for Tom would continue, but now it was more than finding a lost boy. It was about shielding their newfound family, facing down ghosts, and fighting for a future together, whatever the cost. The long fingers of the setting sun stretched across the forest floor as Caleb and Saraphina followed the faint track of Tom's horse deeper into the woods. Saraphina, perched tensely on her saddle, her gaze darting among the trees, voiced her anxiety. He wouldn't have gone far, would he, Caleb? Not with the light fading. Caleb, his jaw a rigid line, attempted reassurance. Tom knows these woods intimately. He's just headstrong. His words, however, rang false even to him. Stubbornness couldn't account for the rifle. Rounding a curve in the overgrown path, they found him. Tom was perched on a fallen tree trunk, his rifle propped against a tree, in conversation with a stranger. The man sported a slightly worn but undeniably vibrant suit, a wide-brimmed hat obscuring his features. A pack brimming with goods rested at his side. A travelling peddler. Relief flooded Caleb, quickly followed by a prickle of irritation. Dismounting, with Saraphina close behind, her face reflecting a blend of eased worry and lingering concern, he called out, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Tom!" Startled, Tom glanced up, a shadow of guilt flitting across his face. He scrambled to his feet. "Caleb. Saraphina. What brings you out here?" "What are you doing out here, Tom?" Caleb countered, moving forward. "We were worried sick. Lily had a premonition." The salesman, a practiced smile plastered on his face, also stood, extending a hand. "Theodore Pruitt, at your service, Sheriff. Just sharing a few words with your brother." His smile was broad, yet his eyes held a calculating spark. Caleb met Pruitt's handshake with a firm grip, assessing him. "Caleb Thorne. And this is my wife, Saraphina." He observed Pruitt's polite nod towards Saraphina. "A pleasure indeed. Such loveliness is a rare gem in these wild parts." Pruitt's gaze lingered a heartbeat too long on Saraphina, and Caleb felt a surge of protective instinct. Softly, Saraphina stepped closer to Tom. "We were anxious, especially after what I confided in you." Tom avoided her gaze, shuffling his feet in the dirt. "I just needed to clear my head. Mr. Pruitt was just passing through." "Precisely," Pruitt echoed. "And a fortunate chance it was. Why, I was regaling young Tom with the tale of a charming woman I encountered some time ago. A Martha, if my memory serves. What a coincidence, eh?" A chuckle escaped him, devoid of warmth. Beside Caleb, Saraphina tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for his. He squeezed it gently, a silent comfort. The dormant instincts of a lawman began to stir within Caleb. "Martha, you say? Where did you have the pleasure of meeting this Martha, Mr. Pruitt?" Pruitt stroked his chin, his eyes flitting nervously as if searching for the right phrase. "Oh, here and there. She travels extensively, you see. A truly independent spirit. Last I saw her, she was venturing west, I believe, close to near the border." "The border, is it?" Caleb probed, his tone deceptively mild. "That's a considerable distance from here. What was her purpose being so far out?" Pruitt hesitated, his smile wavering. "Oh, you know, business matters. A woman of manifold talents, that Martha. Hard to keep abreast of all her ventures." He gave a strained laugh. "What sort of business?" Saraphina queried, her voice barely audible. Pruitt turned towards her, his eyes narrowing subtly. "That's not really my prerogative to disclose, ma'am. A gentleman refrains from inquiring into a lady's affairs. But you were just recounting everything to Tom," Caleb noted, his voice hardening. "Seems like you were doing a good deal of inquiring." Pruitt's facade of geniality began to crack, revealing a hint of something colder underneath. I was merely making conversation. Attempting to be congenial." Caleb moved closer, his larger frame looming over Pruitt. "Congenial? Or were you trying to elicit information? Were you sent here?" Tom, silent until then, finally intervened. "Caleb, stop it. Mr. Pruitt hasn't committed any crime. He was only telling me a story. A story that conveniently involves someone Saraphina once knew," Caleb retorted, his gaze locked on Pruitt. "A story that doesn't quite ring true." He turned to Saraphina, his voice softening. "Are you well?" Saraphina nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and unwavering resolve. "I'm all right. But I don't trust him, Caleb. There's something amiss about him." Caleb knew she spoke the truth. He felt it in his very core. Theodore Pruitt was more than a mere travelling vendor. He was a deceiver, concealing something. And that something, Caleb surmised, was intrinsically linked to Saraphina's history. "Mr. Pruitt," Caleb declared, his voice regaining its authority. "I believe it's time for you to move on, and I advise you to forget everything you think you know about Martha, for your own welfare." Pruitt, sensing the shift in the balance of power, retreated, his smile vanishing without a trace. "Of course, Sheriff. I would never wish to create difficulty." He hastily gathered his pack, his eyes darting uneasily between Caleb and Saraphina. "Just passing through, that's all." He hurried past them, disappearing down the trail, leaving Caleb, Saraphina, and Tom under the deepening twilight. Caleb watched him depart, his mind racing with possibilities. He needed to uncover Pruitt's identity and his employer. He needed to safeguard Saraphina and his family from whatever peril lurked in the darkness. He turned to Tom, his expression grave. "We will discuss this later, your reasons for taking the rifle and what Pruitt divulged. But for now, we're returning home. Together." Tom nodded, his face etched with regret. He retrieved his rifle and followed Caleb and Saraphina back towards their horses, the silence punctuated only by the whisper of leaves and the distant call of an owl. A sense of foreboding lingered, heavy and undeniable, a dark presence casting a shadow over their fragile tranquility. "Martha, isn't it?" Theodore Pruitt's voice, once smooth as oiled leather, now scraped like gravel on stone. Tom stood frozen beside him, his eyes wide with a terror Caleb had only glimpsed in nightmares. The travelling salesman's hand rested lightly on Tom's shoulder, but the subtle pressure spoke volumes. A glint of metal flashed in Pruitt's other hand. A small, unassuming derringer pointed directly at Tom's temple. The air, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, suddenly felt suffocating. Saraphina flinched, her hand instinctively reaching for Caleb's. He squeezed it tight, a silent promise of protection. "Let him go, Pruitt." Caleb's voice was low, steady, a sheriff's command honed over years of diffusing volatile situations. But inside, a cold dread coiled, tighter and tighter. He'd failed to protect Tom. Pruitt chuckled, a dry, humourless sound. "Let him go?" "Sheriff, you wound me. I'm merely ensuring Miss Martha here understands the gravity of the situation. A beautiful woman like her, running away from her family, tisk, very naughty." His gaze flickered over Saraphina, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Your father misses you terribly, Miss Blackwood. He's been inconvenienced by your absence." The name hung in the air, heavy and damning. Blackwood. It confirmed Caleb's worst fears. The woman he'd come to love, the woman who had breathed life back into his orphaned family, was running from something far more dangerous than a simple mistake. Saraphina's face paled, but her chin lifted. "Silas sent you." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, laced with bitterness and resignation. "Silas sends his regards," Pruitt confirmed, his smile widening, revealing teeth that seemed a little too sharp. "And a generous offer. Return home, and all will be forgiven. Continue this a charade, and welle." He gestured towards Tom with the derringer. Caleb's blood ran cold. He shifted his weight, his hand hovering near his own revolver. But he couldn't risk it. Not with Tom in the line of fire. "What does Silas want?" he asked, stalling for time, searching for an opening. "Silas wants what's his," a new voice boomed, cutting through the tension like a thunderclap. A figure emerged from the trees, tall and imposing, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit that seemed absurdly out of place in the rugged landscape. His face was etched with years of ruthless ambition and a chilling lack of empathy. It was a face that could command empires and crush souls. Silas Blackwood. Saraphina gasped, a sound like a wounded bird. She recoiled, pressing herself against Caleb, her body trembling. "Martha," Blackwood said, his voice surprisingly gentle, almost paternal. "Come home, daughter. This isn't your life." He gestured dismissively at Caleb, at the small, worn house, at the life Saraphina had painstakingly built. "You belong with us. With me." Caleb felt a surge of protectiveness, a fierce, primal instinct to defend what was his. He stepped forward, placing himself between Saraphina and Blackwood. "She's not going anywhere with you." Blackwood's gaze hardened. "Sheriff, isn't it? I appreciate you taking care of my wayward child, but this is a family matter. Best not to interfere. She's my family now," Caleb countered, his voice firm, unwavering. He wasn't just a sheriff anymore. He was a father, a husband, a protector. He had a family to defend, and he'd be damned if he'd let Blackwood take them away. Tom, seeing his chance, subtly shifted his weight, trying to create distance between himself and Pruitt. The Pruitt was too quick. He tightened his grip on Tom's shoulder, pressing the derringer harder against his temple. Tom winced, his eyes pleading. "Don't move, boy," Pruitt hissed. "Or you'll regret it." Blackwood sighed, a sound of weary disappointment. "Martha, why do you make this so difficult? I don't want anyone to get hurt. Just come home, please." Saraphina, her face pale but resolute, stepped out from behind Caleb. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Father. This is my home. These are my people." She looked at Caleb, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I'm not your daughter anymore." Blackwood's face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful wretch. After everything I've done for you. Everything you've done." Saraphina spat, her voice laced with venom. "You controlled me. You suffocated me. You treated me like a possession, not a daughter. I did it because I loved you," Blackwood roared. "Because I wanted to protect you." "Protect me?" Saraphina laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You protected your image. You protected your power. You never cared about me." The air crackled with unspoken accusations, with years of pent-up resentment and pain. Caleb watched, his heart aching for Saraphina, for the years of torment she had endured. He knew he had to do something, but he was trapped. Any wrong move could cost Tom his life. Pruitt, sensing the shift in momentum, tightened his grip on Tom, his eyes darting nervously between Blackwood and Caleb. "Perhaps we should move this somewhere more private," he suggested, his voice strained. Blackwood nodded grimly. "Yes. Let's not make a scene. Sheriff, I suggest you cooperate. For the boy's sake." Caleb's jaw tightened. He was caught in a trap, a web of deceit and danger spun by a man who wielded power and influence like a weapon. He had to find a way out, a way to protect his family, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Because he looked into Tom's terrified eyes, he knew he couldn't back down. He wouldn't. He'd fight for them, until his last breath. "Let him go, Blackwood," Caleb repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "This doesn't have to end badly." Blackwood's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Oh, Sheriff, it already has." Saraphina's thoughts churned. Predictably, Teddy grovelled before Silas Blackwood's imposing form, a sycophant fawning at a king. Blackwood himself exuded icy command, his gaze, the colour of a coming squall, never wavering from her. Yet, it was the smug gleam in Teddy's eyes that solidified her resolve. She refused to be a mere pawn. "Father," she began, her voice surprisingly firm despite the tremor in her fingers. "Must we stage this spectacle? Surely, we can discuss this in private." She chanced a glance at Caleb, his face a rigid mask of fury, then back to Teddy, whose triumphant smirk wavered. Blackwood's eyes flicked to Teddy, a silent rebuke. "Theodore was invaluable in locating you, Martha. He's earned the right to witness our reunion." "Invaluable," Saraphina countered, adopting a light, almost teasing tone. "Or simply opportunistic? I imagine Mr. Pruitt anticipates a generous reward for his efforts." She let amusement dance in her eyes, a subtle jab at Teddy's vanity. "Tell me, Theodore, did father promise you acreage? A piece of the Blackwood empire, perhaps? Or just a pat on the head and a well done?" Teddy's face burned a furious red. "That's not enough," Blackwood snapped, silencing Teddy with a curt gesture. "Martha, your charades bore me. Return home." "Home?" Saraphina echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "You call that gilded cage home? I choose my freedom, father, and I found it here." She threaded her fingers through Lily's hair, drawing the child close. Caleb advanced, his hand hovering near the butt of his revolver. "Saraphina remains here. She's family now." Blackwood's eyes narrowed to slits. "You presume too much, Sheriff. You misunderstand the dynamics at play." "Perhaps." Caleb's voice was a low growl. "But I understand you're threatening those I care for, and that's something I won't tolerate." The air crackled with tension, a palpable force. Tom, ever vigilant, edged closer to Lily, his gaze flitting between Blackwood and Teddy, calculating the danger. Saraphina knew they were outmatched, outgunned. She needed to disrupt the balance, even for a moment. Her gaze snagged on the well, its wooden frame aged by the elements. A daring, reckless idea bloomed in her mind. "Father, you always underestimated my talents," she said, her voice regaining its playful cadence. "Did you know I've become quite skilled at dowsing? This town, it appears, sits atop a veritable reservoir of water, far more than that pitiful excuse for a well you saw on the way in. I suspect, with the right investment, this could become the most flourishing town in the territory." Avarice flickered across Blackwood's face, momentarily eclipsing the cold authority. "Water rights hold considerable value, Martha. Immense value." "Indeed," Saraphina agreed, a spark of calculated mischief in her eyes. "But locating the source requires expertise and a willingness to get one's hands dirty." She glanced pointedly at the well. "The richest veins, I've discovered, often lie deepest." Teddy, always seeking approval, swallowed the bait whole. "I'll do it, Mr. Blackwood. I'll examine the well." He started toward it, his derringer momentarily forgotten in his eagerness. "Now." "Caleb!" Saraphina yelled, shoving Lily towards Tom. "Now." As Teddy reached the well, peering into its shadowed depths, Saraphina seized a nearby bucket and, with a surge of adrenaline, hurled it at his head. The bucket connected with a resounding crack, sending Teddy sprawling head first. Caleb, reacting instantly, drew his revolver and relieved the stunned salesman of his weapon. Blackwood roared in fury, reaching for his own firearm. But Saraphina was prepared. She knew this land. She knew its secrets. "Father, wait," she cried, pointing towards the dense thicket bordering the property. "Look, are those Indians?" Blackwood, momentarily thrown, glanced in the direction she indicated. A feint, of course, but the brief hesitation in his eyes was enough. "Tom, Lily, run," Caleb commanded, pushing them towards the house. He kept his gun trained on Blackwood, his gaze hard. "Get inside and bolt the door." Saraphina grabbed a shovel leaning against the barn and, with a defiant cry, charged towards Blackwood. She swung the shovel with surprising power, connecting with his shin. He stumbled, cursing viciously, giving Caleb the advantage he needed. In the ensuing fracas, Blackwood managed to fire a shot, the bullet singing past Caleb's ear. But Caleb was quicker. He tackled Blackwood to the ground, wresting the gun from his grasp. Teddy, still reeling from the bucket, tried to interfere, but Saraphina kicked the derringer away, sending it spinning across the parched earth. Within moments, Caleb had both Blackwood and Teddy subdued, their hands bound behind their backs with rope pilfered from the barn. He looked at Saraphina, his eyes a mixture of admiration and incredulity. "Where did you learn moves like that?" he asked, amusement lacing his voice. Saraphina shrugged, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "A girl learns self-reliance when her father deals in ruthlessness, Sheriff." "You okay?" Caleb asked, his voice gentling, taking her hand in his. "I am now," she said, squeezing his hand. Tom emerged from the house, Lily clinging to his leg, her eyes wide with terror. Are they gone?" "Not gone," Caleb replied, "but they're not going anywhere soon." He looked at Saraphina. "We need to get them to the jail. And then," he added, his tone hardening, "we need to decide what comes next." As Caleb led Blackwood and Teddy toward town, Saraphina stood in the yard watching them recede into the seed. Distance. A wave of relief washed over her, but beneath it lingered a deep disquiet. Silas Blackwood wouldn't accept defeat. He would return. And next time, she knew, the stakes would be far higher. The wagon groaned its way into Harmony Creek, a tawny cloud churning in its wake. Caleb, reins tight in hand, guided the horses the past days had carved themselves into the lines around his mouth. Beside him, Seraphina's gaze, fixed on the approaching buildings, held both trepidation and resolve. In the back, Tom worried a scrap of leather, his customary silence deepened by recent events. As they neared Plumtree's general store, residents emerged, their expressions a blend of curiosity and concern. Agnes Plumtree, flour dusting her apron, stood sentinel on the porch, eyes wide. Jed Billings lounged against a support post, a toothpick his constant companion, his face an impassive mask. A small gathering of townsfolk stood behind them, their quiet murmurings the only sound as the wagon creaked to a standstill. Caleb swung down, his joints protesting. He scanned the crowd, seeking any hint of animosity. Finding only a quiet, watchful expectancy, he cleared his throat. "We're back." His voice, raspy. Before he could elaborate, Lily erupted from the throng, her braids bouncing. "Saraphina!" she shrieked, joy bursting in her voice. She hurled herself at Saraphina, encircling her waist with her small arms. "You came back. Really?" Seraphina's features softened, and she returned the embrace fiercely. "Of course I did, Lilybug," she murmured, her voice thick. "Where else would I be?" Kneeling, she held Lily close. Tom, initially rooted to the spot, edged forward, eyes glued to the dirt. He halted a few feet away, hands buried in his pockets. You looked after him," he mumbled, barely audible. Seraphina rose, meeting Tom's averted gaze. "He needed looking after, Tom," she replied gently. "And your sister, too." Tom nodded slowly, his posture easing slightly. He still avoided her eyes, but Caleb detected a nascent gratitude there. The townspeople remained muted, observing the tableau. Caleb felt their collective scrutiny. On him, Saraphina, his niece and nephew. He knew their questions. Who was this woman? Truly. What sway did she hold over his family? Agnes Plumtree, never one to let a moment pass unexamined, approached. "Caleb," she began, her tone tinged with worry. "We heard things about Silas Blackwood." Caleb sighed heavily. "It's true. He came. He tried to take Saraphina. He failed. He intentionally glossed over Seraphina's pivotal role, wanting to safeguard her secret, if only for a little longer." Jed Billings straightened, ejecting his toothpick. "And you drove him off?" he challenged, skepticism lacing his question. "We did," Caleb affirmed, his gaze unwavering. A ripple of whispers spread through the onlookers. Caleb knew they struggled to reconcile the picture of this cultured, enigmatic woman with that of someone who had faced down a brute like Silas Blackwood. Evelyn Abernathy, her face a study in disapproval, stepped forward. "Sheriff," she declared, her voice like honed steel. "Surely you grasp the implications. This woman, she's invited trouble to our community." Caleb's jaw hardened. "Saraphina shielded my family," he asserted, his tone unwavering. "She didn't invite trouble, she helped us fight it off. And above all, family looks after family, Evelyn. That's what Saraphina has done." Evelyn's lips compressed into a thin line. "But her influence on Lily the books, the ideas she's filling her head with." Lily, hearing her name, gripped Seraphina's hand tighter. Seraphina responded with a reassuring squeeze, her eyes flashing with defiance. "Lily is a bright, inquisitive child," she countered, her voice ringing with conviction. "She deserves to learn and to think for herself, and I will not apologize for fostering that." For a long moment, Evelyn scrutinized Seraphina, her expression indecipherable. Then, something flickered in her eyes. Perhaps she glimpsed the genuine affection in Seraphina's expression, the fierce protection she extended to Lily. Perhaps she simply acknowledged the strength and resolve etched in her stance. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Evelyn's lips softened into a hesitant smile. "Well," she conceded, her voice losing some of its bite. I suppose Lily does seem brighter." She glanced at Lily, a spark of warmth flickering in her gaze. "And she's been performing better with her numbers, so I hear." Lily beamed, her face radiating joy. She tugged on Seraphina's hand. "See?" she whispered. "I told you she wasn't so bad." Seraphina smiled, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and gratitude. She recognized Evelyn's shift as a minor victory, but a victory nonetheless. It signaled that, perhaps, she could carve out a niche in this town, a place where she could be accepted for who she was, not who she had been. The tension dissipated like morning mist. Agnes Plumtree bustled forward, her eyes twinkling. "Well, enough standing around," she announced, her voice booming. "Let's get you all inside. I've got a pot of stew bubbling away, and it smells like you could all use a proper meal." One by one, the townsfolk echoed her sentiments, offering welcomes and support. A surge of emotion washed over Caleb, a potent cocktail of relief, gratitude, and something else, something profound. He looked at Seraphina, her face alight in the waning sun, Lily at her side, Tom standing a little closer. He saw not a mail-order bride, not a runaway heiress, but a woman who had become the bedrock of his family. He placed a hand on Seraphina's back, guiding her towards the general store. "Come on," he murmured, his voice low. "Let's go home." He paused, adding softly, for her ears only, "Welcome home." Seraphina met his gaze, her eyes shimmering with unfallen tears. She gave his hand a gentle squeeze. She remained silent, but Caleb understood. She was home. and, at long last, truly accepted. The noontide sun hammered Harmony Creek, stirring eddies of gold dust along the thoroughfare. Saraphina, sleeves pushed up, fastened freshly laundered linens behind the sheriff's residence, the clean tang of lye and sun-baked fabric permeating the air. Nearby, Lily and Tom were absorbed in a spirited marbles match near the barn, their joyous shouts a counter-melody to the clothesline's gentle sway. A tableau of quiet domesticity, a fragile haven she yearned to safeguard. Caleb's appearance at the back door dispelled the idyllic scene. His brow was creased with concern as he approached, a pristine white envelope in hand, a stark contrast against the worn leather of his gun belt. "This arrived for you, Saraphina," he announced, his tone uncertain. The postman mentioned it had been circling. A knot tightened in Saraphina's stomach, stealing her breath. Colour ebbed from her face. The elegant swirling script was unmistakable. Genevieve's. A wave of icy premonition washed over her, muting the children's glee and casting a pall over the sunlit afternoon. With hands that trembled almost imperceptibly, she accepted the letter. "Thank you, Caleb." She held it close, as though physically restraining the storm brewing within. I need to be alone while I read this." He studied her, his blue eyes sharp with apprehension. He saw the raw fear she usually masked so expertly. A slow nod was his only response. "Of course. I'll keep the youngsters occupied." She sought the supposed refuge of her room, the missive feeling like a lead weight. What had once been a sanctuary now felt like a gilded cage. The click of the closing door echoed in the sudden silence. She perched on the bed's edge, her pulse throbbing in her ears. For a long moment she simply stared, her mind a whirlwind of speculation. What did they want after all this time? Had she finally been found? She had dreaded this moment, but hoped against hope it would never come. A deep, shuddering breath preceded the tear she made at the envelope's edge. The texture of the expensive paper felt like an accusation. The message was brief, direct, and chillingly impersonal. "Saraphina, Father demands your immediate return. Your prolonged absence has created considerable complications. He is willing to overlook your past indiscretions, should you comply without delay. CC all attempts at communication. We are aware of your location. Further resistance will have repercussions for those providing you shelter. Genevieve." Saraphina crushed the letter, knuckles bone white. The words blared, each a poisoned barb. Repercussions. She knew the chilling weight of that word. Her father dealt in no empty pronouncements. He was a man of formidable influence, one who would brook no opposition to his will. And now, his will demanded her. She scanned the message again, hunting for a sliver of affection, any sign that her family valued her beyond her utility. She found only cold, calculated manipulation. Rising, she approached the window, her gaze drawn to Caleb and the children at play. Tom was chasing Lily, his small limbs a blur of motion, his expression radiant. Caleb watched, a tender smile gracing his lips. A pang of piercing guilt struck her. She had imported this threat into their lives. Her past was now jeopardizing their future. She pictured Caleb, his inherent goodness, his steadfast strength, his unshakable faith in her. Lily, with her quick intelligence, her insatiable curiosity, the innocent admiration she saw in Saraphina's eyes. And Tom, with his boundless zest and trusting heart. They had become her family, her lifeline in a world of turbulence. Could she gamble with their safety to preserve her own? Could she subject them to her father's ruthless power? The answer was a resounding, heart-wrenching denial. But what alternative remained? Flight meant surrendering to her father's dominion, returning to a life of misery. Staying meant placing Caleb and the children squarely in harm's way. She sank back onto the bed, burying her face in her hands, tears flowing freely. She felt trapped, ensnared between two impossible choices. Regardless of her decision, those she held dear would suffer. She had to shield them. She would not allow her history to contaminate their future. Resolve stiffening, she rose, each inhalation fueling her determination. She would flee. She would disappear once more, dissolving into the vastness of the West, praying her father would eventually relinquish his pursuit. It was the sole path to ensure their well-being. But how could she abandon them without explanation? How could she turn her back on Caleb, Lily, and Tom without shattering them? And how could she endure leaving them, knowing she might never see them again? She approached the small writing desk tucked in the corner. With trembling fingers, she grasped a pen, dipping it into the inkwell. She had to compose a letter, one that offered some semblance of explanation without divulging too much. A letter that might somehow cushion the blow of her sudden departure. She began to write, the words pouring from her pen in a torrent of sorrow and regret. She relayed the depth of her affection for them, her gratitude for their kindness and acceptance. She explained that she was forced to leave, that it was the sole means of shielding them from a danger they could not fathom. She dared not expose the truth, the full scope of her father's authority, fearing it would only exacerbate the situation. Her hand aching, her heart burdened, she concluded the letter. She folded it meticulously and sealed it with a tear. She placed it on the pillow, where Caleb was certain to discover it. Then, she turned to her trunk and began to pack, her movements automatic, her mind adrift. She gathered her sparse belongings, the garments she had acquired in Harmony Creek, the small keepsakes she had accumulated along her journey. She avoided glancing at the photographs of Caleb and the children, afraid it would erode her resolve. As she fastened the trunk, she heard a knock. Her heart lurched. Saraphina? It was Caleb. His tone was laced with gentle concern. "Are you all right? I thought I heard you crying." She froze, her hand still clasped to the trunk. She couldn't confront him. Not now, poised as she was to devastate his world. "I'm fine, Caleb," she managed, her voice a mere breath. "Just a bit of a headache. I think I'll rest. Can I fetch you anything?" he offered. "Some water? A cool compress?" "No, thank you," she replied. "I simply need to rest." He hesitated for an instant, then sighed. "All right. But if you need anything at all, please let me know." "I will," she assured him. She heard his retreating footsteps. She closed her eyes, tears silently tracing paths down her face. She had to depart. She had to depart now, before she lost the courage to do so. She cast one last lingering look around the room, imprinting every detail upon her memory. Then, she hefted the trunk and carried it to the rear entrance. The setting sun cast elongated shadows across the yard. Caleb and the children were still engaged in their game, their joyful sounds echoing in the gathering dusk. She paused, observing them for a final instant, her heart lacerated with each beat. Then, with a soundless farewell, she melted into the darkness, abandoning everything she had come to cherish. The moon, a sliver of regret in the inky sky, cast long skeletal fingers across the floorboards. Saraphina moved like a ghost, each step measured, each breath held captive. The small satchel lay open on the bed, swallowing the meagre possessions she'd accumulated in Harmony Creek, a worn copy of Brad, Wuthering Heights, a silver locket Lily had gifted her, a handful of wildflowers pressed between the pages of a botanical guide. Her fingers trembled as she folded a simple cotton dress, the fabric whispering against the silence like a guilty secret. Every item was a testament to a life she couldn't have, a life she was actively destroying by staying. She paused, her gaze snagging on the framed photograph on the bedside table. Caleb, Lily, and Tom, their smiles genuine, their eyes alight with a happiness she knew she couldn't protect. Genevieve's threat echoed in her mind, a venomous whisper that poisoned the very air she breathed. Repercussions. For those harboring you. She couldn't risk it. Not them. Closing the satchel felt like slamming the door on her own heart. Saraphina moved to the children's room, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. The door creaked open, revealing Lily and Tom nestled together in the small bed. Lily's dark hair fanned across the pillow, and Tom's arm was draped protectively across her. They looked so peaceful, so innocent. She knelt beside the bed, her hand hovering over Lily's cheek. The urge to wake her, to hold her, to whisper a goodbye was almost unbearable. But she couldn't. A tear escaped, tracing a hot path down her cheek, landing silently on Lily's blanket. "Ow, my sweet girl," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. I wish things could have been different." She brushed a stray curl from Lily's forehead, her touch feather light, a silent promise she knew she couldn't keep. Then she turned to Tom. His brow was furrowed even in sleep, a shadow of the worry he carried for his sister. Saraphina gently smoothed his hair, a gesture of gratitude for his cautious acceptance, for the slow thaw of his initial distrust. "Be good to her, Tom," she murmured. "Always." With a final, lingering look, she backed away, the image of their sleeping faces seared into her memory. In the main room, she found a piece of parchment and Caleb's fountain pen. The ink bled slightly as she wrote, her hand shaking so violently the words were almost illegible. "Caleb," she began, then hesitated. What could she possibly say that wouldn't sound like a lie? "I have to go. I can't explain, but please believe me when I say this is for the best. For you. For Lily and Tom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to bring trouble to your door. You deserve happiness, all of you. Please, don't come looking for me. Just forget I ever existed." She signed it simply, Martha, the name that felt like a lifetime ago, a shield she had foolishly thought could protect her. Folding the note, she placed it on the table where he'd be sure to see it, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a physical burden. The house felt suffocating, filled with the ghosts of laughter and shared meals, of bedtime stories and stolen kisses. Each object, each memory, was a painful reminder of what she was leaving behind. Taking one last look, Saraphina stepped out into the cool light air, the vast expanse of the prairie stretching before her, a blank canvas on which she would have to paint a new, solitary life. As she walked, the first rays of dawn began to paint the eastern sky with streaks of pink and gold. She didn't turn back. She couldn't. Every step away from Harmony Creek was a step further into the unknown, a sacrifice she hoped would be enough to keep them safe. Caleb found the note later that morning. The coffee was brewing, the bacon was sizzling in the pan. Small things that Saraphina had started doing that had somehow become indispensable. But the house was eerily silent. Too silent. Lily and Tom were already at the table, their faces alight with morning energy. "Where's Saraphina?" Lily asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Caleb forced a smile. "She must have gone out early. Maybe she went for a ride." But he knew, deep down, that wasn't true. Saraphina never went anywhere without telling him. He saw the folded piece of parchment sitting on the table, and his heart lurched. He picked it up, his fingers trembling slightly. The handwriting was shaky, unfamiliar. He read the note in silence, his face growing paler with each word. The blood drained from his face, leaving him cold and numb. He looked at Lily and Tom, their innocent faces filled with expectation, and a wave of protectiveness washed over him. He crumpled the note in his fist, the paper crackling like a dying ember. "She's gone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Lily's eyes widened, tears welling up. "Gone where? Is she coming back?" Tom, his face unreadable, reached out and took Lily's hand. Caleb knelt down, pulling them both into a tight embrace. "I don't know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But we'll be all right. We always are." He didn't believe his own words. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that Saraphina hadn't just left. She had run. And whatever she was running from was something dangerous, something that had scared her enough to abandon the life they had built together. He stood up, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He knew he should respect her wishes, let her go. But he couldn't. He wouldn't. He wouldn't let her face whatever demons she was running from alone. She was his family. And he would bring her home, no matter the cost. He looked at the horizon and resolved to find her, bring her home, and protect his family at all costs. The morning's icy fingers snaked through the chinks in the cabin walls, a cruel reminder of the warmth that had vanished with the night. Caleb's hand groped for Saraphina, finding only a frigid emptiness. His eyes flew open, a cold dread coiling in his gut. He bolted upright, the homespun blanket sliding off his chest, and searched the small room. Her trunk had vanished. A wave of panic choked him. Tossing aside the covers, he yanked on his pants. On the kitchen table, bathed in the pale dawn, lay a note. The script was undeniably hers, precise and elegant, yet betraying a tremor of hidden desperation. He snatched it up, his pulse hammering in his ears. "Caleb," it began, "this is what I believe is best. For you, for Lily and Tom. I can't remain. I am truly sorry." The words swam before his eyes, blurring with unexpected tears. He crushed the paper, the faint rustle echoing the dying embers in the hearth. He found Lily and Tom already at the table, their young faces wan and creased with apprehension. "Where's Martha?" Lily whispered, her voice a fragile thread. Tom, usually a pillar of composure, gazed up at him, his eyes wide with alarm. Caleb knelt, his voice raspy. She's had to go away for a while." Lily's lip trembled. "But why? Did we do something wrong?" "No, precious, absolutely not. This has nothing to do with you. She simply had some urgent matters to attend to." Tom, practical as ever, cut through the sugarcoating. "Is she returning?" Caleb hesitated, the oppressive weight of uncertainty crushing him. He couldn't deceive them, not now. "I don't know, son." Lily dissolved into sobs, flinging herself at Caleb. "Bring her back, Pa. Please bring Martha back. We love her." Tom, battling his own tears, echoed his sister's plea. "Please, Pa, don't let her leave us." The stark vulnerability in their voices shattered the last vestiges of his composure. He gazed at their tear-streaked faces, at the delicate hope that had bloomed in their eyes since Saraphina's arrival, and a fierce protectiveness blazed within him. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that he couldn't let her disappear. Not without a confrontation. Not without revealing everything. He gathered Lily and Tom into a tight embrace. "I promise," he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "I swear I'll do all I can to bring her back." He rose, his determination solidifying like iron. He needed to consult Jed. Jed missed nothing. He stalked out of the cabin, the crisp morning air stinging his cheeks, and strode toward the livery. Jed was already there, tending the horses, his brow etched with worry. "Morning, Caleb," he greeted, his tone subdued. "Heard some commotion earlier. Saraphina, she's gone, hasn't she?" Caleb nodded, his face grim. "She has. Did you see which direction she took?" Jed gestured westward. "Took the stagecoach road. Said she was headed for Denver." Denver. She was fleeing, running to the far horizon. Caleb felt a surge of frustration, intertwined with a desperate longing. "Thanks, Jed. I'm in your debt. Just bring her back safe, Caleb. That's all I ask. Those children need her. And well, truth be told, so do you." Jed's words lingered in the chilled air, confirming what Caleb had been stubbornly denying for weeks. He saddled his horse, a knot of resolve tightening in his stomach. He conjured Saraphina's face, the captivating sparkle in her eyes when she laughed, the feather-light touch of her hand. He recalled her quiet fortitude, the secrets he sensed she carried, and the burgeoning affection he felt, not merely for the woman caring for his kin, but for Saraphina Martha herself. He spurred his horse forward, the wind tearing through his hair. He had no idea what he would say, how he could persuade her to remain. He only knew he couldn't bear to see her vanish. He loved her. The realization struck with the force of a physical blow, leaving him winded and shaken. He, Caleb Thorne, a man renowned for his composure and unwavering control, was utterly and irrevocably in love with a woman who was running away. He rode with relentless speed, urging his horse to its utmost, the rhythmic pounding of hooves mirroring the frantic rhythm of his own heart. The landscape blurred into an indistinguishable tapestry of sagebrush and scrub oak, his focus solely on the trail ahead. He had to intercept her. He had to declare his feelings. The sun climbed higher, casting elongated shadows across the plains. He passed a few wagons heading eastward, their drivers offering curt nods as he roared past. Each league that stretched between him and Harmony Creek felt like an unbearable eternity. Finally, in the distance, he made out the stagecoach, a plume of dust rising behind it like a flag of defiance. He pressed his horse onward, the distance shrinking inch by agonizing inch. He knew he had to proceed cautiously. He couldn't simply seize her and drag her back, no matter the intensity of his desire. He had to reason with her, to reach the woman hidden beneath layers of fear and secrets. He had to convey to her that she was no longer solitary. That he, Lily and Tom desperately needed her presence. That he loved her beyond measure. He slowed his mount as he drew alongside the stagecoach. Through the grimy window, he glimpsed her face, gaunt and strained, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery. She looked adrift, utterly and completely lost. He matched the stagecoach's speed, his voice ringing out, clear and resolute. "Saraphina, Martha, halt the stagecoach." The stagecoach shuddered to a standstill, pitching Saraphina forward. A sunbeam lanced through the suddenly opened door, illuminating dust swirling in the air, and Caleb's face a landscape of raw anguish she'd never witnessed. He seemed utterly unmoored. "Saraphina," he rasped, his voice like parched earth. "Not Martha. Never Saraphina." The forgotten name, the truest name, reverberated within her, a shocking intimacy. Rising, she gripped her worn satchel. "Caleb, why are you here?" Her query sounded fragile, even to herself. He boarded, engulfing the cramped space. The aroma of tanned leather and equine sweat radiated from him, a familiar, steadying presence. "I've come to bring you back." Her breath caught. "I can't return, Caleb. Don't you see? My actions shield you. Lily and Tom." He closed the gap, his gaze fixed, intense. "Don't presume to dictate what's best for us, Saraphina. For me." His hand, tentative, caressed her cheek. Her skin flared with heat, an ache of yearning brought tears to her eyes. "I came because I love you." The declaration hung heavy, freighted with unspoken histories. Love? For her? Saraphina, the estranged daughter of a man who trafficked in darkness? She scrutinized his expression, desperate for falsehood, finding instead only sincerity, a naked vulnerability mirroring her own. "Caleb," she whispered, voice trembling on the edge of breaking. "You mustn't. You don't understand. I understand that since you arrived in Harmony Creek, everything has blossomed. All for the better," he insisted, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. "Lily and Tom worship you. I anticipate glimpsing your face each morning, hearing your voice, bickering about those infernal chickens." A fleeting smile played on his lips. "And my existence, our existence, is rendered unimaginable without you." Stepping back, he dropped his hand, granting her space to breathe, to choose. His naked candor was disarming. "I know of your father, Saraphina, enough to know what you've truly fled, and I believe I can safeguard you. We can safeguard you. Together." Her gaze dropped, unable to meet his. The crushing weight of her past pressed down. "You underestimate his capabilities. He'll pursue me relentlessly." "Then we'll stand ready," Caleb stated, his voice resolute and unwavering. "We'll confront him together. He will not touch you. He will not harm my family." "My family." The words resonated within her, a spark of warmth amidst the chilling fear that had consumed her for so long. Lily and Tom, with their perpetually dishevelled hair and boundless curiosity. Caleb, with his quiet fortitude and steadfast eyes. Could she genuinely permit herself to believe in this? Risk infecting their lives with the poison of her past? Tears flowed freely now, a cascade of relief, dread, and a nascent hope. "I'm so afraid, Caleb." Enfolding her in a fierce embrace, he whispered, "I know. It's okay to be frightened, but you're not alone any longer." She clung to him, burying her face in the crook of his shoulder, inhaling his comforting scent. For the first time in years, safety bloomed within her. For the first time in years, she dared to envision a possible future. "I love you too, Caleb," she confessed, the words tumbling out, unbidden. "I love you and Lily and Tom. I never imagined I could have this." Pulling back slightly, he framed her face with his hands. "You deserve this, Saraphina. You deserve happiness. And I will expend every ounce of my being to ensure you attain it." Gazing into his eyes, she saw the promise ablaze, the unwavering devotion, and her course crystallized. This wasn't a rash defiance, but a calculated volition, a conscious embrace of the life she had discovered. "Take me home, Caleb," she's Carl breathed. A smile dawned. A radiant, soul-stirring smile that illuminated his face. Taking her hand, his grip was resolute and reassuring. "Let's go." They descended from the stagecoach, hand in hand. The driver, a leathery man with eyes that had witnessed too much suffering, touched his hat in quiet acknowledgement. Caleb assisted Saraphina onto his horse, then mounted behind, circling her waist with his arms. As they turned the horse back towards Harmony Creek, Saraphina tasted a tranquility she'd forgotten existed. The apprehension lingered, a shadow lurking nearby, but it no longer reigned supreme. Now there was also the bright flame of hope, the warmth of love. and the unyielding strength of the man at her back. They rode in companionable silence for a time, the horse's steady cadence on the rough track the only sound. Rounding the final bend, she spotted Lily and Tom sprinting. Toward them, their faces radiant with jubilation. "Saraphina! You're back!" Lily squealed, her pigtails flying behind her. Tom, generally more reserved, grinned from ear to ear. "You returned." Dismounting, Caleb lifted Saraphina down. Lily and Tom enveloped her legs in a tight embrace. Kneeling, she hugged them fiercely. "I missed you both so much," she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. Caleb stepped close, resting a hand on Seraphina's shoulder. "We all missed you." Turning to the children, his gaze softened. "We're family. Remember? And family stays together." Extending his hands, Lily and Tom immediately clasped one each. Caleb turned back to Saraphina, an unvoiced question in his eyes. Smiling, she took his free hand. Together, hand in hand, they walked back into Harmony Creek, a family forged in the crucible of adversity and strengthened by love, prepared to face whatever future awaited.